Alright then. Hello ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to um, Final Fantasy XIV, of course. And my channel. It's been a while since I've last talked to you guys, I realized that. Um, I apologize, ahead of time for the low quality and lack of content thereof, but first and foremost, let's address the title of this video, which, as I'm sure has everyone's interest who's going to see this video or who's already watching. And that's saying farewell to Final Fantasy XIV. Basically, in this video, I'm going to discuss my last thoughts on Final Fantasy XIV as someone who's played the game for as long as I have, and the current direction it's in and all that stuff. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, I just want to say something to the music producer of Final Fantasy XIV, the music producer and developer, Masayoshi Soken. So, during FanFest, it was revealed that during very middle of, development of Shadowbringers, he was diagnosed with cancer. And so it must have been pretty brutal and pretty hard to deal with that. But even so, he continued to work on Final Fantasy XIV in that current state. He said he didn't want to give up, that he was going to keep pushing, and that he looks forward to everyone's reactions and everything with the music he's continued to do for Endwalker and beyond. So, and it was a very vulnerable moment for the whole, the whole development team, and especially the producer, Naoki Yoshida. And so, what I want to say to Masayoshi Soken is, thank you. Thank you so much for your service and your work and dedication to Final Fantasy XIV. We greatly appreciate this so much, that you would work on our behalf, even when death's door is knocking on your door, so to speak. It just shows how much, he really loves this game and loves seeing the fans' ecstatic excitement and just happiness with he brings with the music. And I mean, he really does with the music and sound effects and everything. He brings he brings the noise to Final Fantasy XIV. He brings it to life. So, thank you very much, Masayoshi Soken, for fighting the good fight, and having your cancer going to remission is fantastic news to hear. Especially to me, who early in this year, and this is kind of real personal, so take it how you will, but I lost a beloved family member to their cancer. Unfortunately, they didn't make it through their fight. And so it's just been a little bit rough that way, but I'm just really happy, to see that someone else was able to make it through that hell and still continue to come out with a happy, joyful smile on his face and everything. So, we very much appreciate you, Masayoshi Soken, and thank you. Thank you, thank you. We can say it as many times as we possibly can until your ears bleed, but thank you again for your dedication, your service to Final Fantasy XIV. It's greatly appreciated, and we love you for it very much. Okay, anyway, without further ado then, I wanted to make this video and discuss Final Fantasy XIV again, because this is going to be it, you guys. This is it for me as far as supporting Final Fantasy XIV goes and making content for it. And I'm going to outline my reasons why for that, because that's important that you know where I come from and why I say I'm going to stop. Now, obviously, I know that a lot of people are going to disagree. They might post hateful or trolly comments. They'll dislike the video, and that's fine. You know, we're allowed to express our own views and opinions on things without being real nasty to each other. And that's actually part of this topic that I'm going to address, is the Final Fantasy community as a whole and what it represents and is. So normally I don't have too much critical things to say in regards to Final Fantasy XIV or the dev team that works hard on the game and everything, but I think it's been long enough that I've been kind of talking about it and seeing this current state that the game is currently in and continues to be. You know, I just can't keep it up anymore, the act of, you know, praising it when I know that it's really not all that fantastic of a game as I thought it was at first. And so, new players, this video isn't really for you. I mean, you can listen in if you think it's worth getting a second opinion on the game, especially from someone who's played for this game as long as I have. I've been playing, you guys, for 9 whole years that this game has been in service, and it's been in service for 10 years now. So 9 of those 10 years I've been playing this game for a really, really long time. And I have to say, you know, I've really enjoyed the game so much. It brought out a lot of joy, sometimes anger and frustrations, and other times sadness, but, you know, for what it's worth, this game is a Final Fantasy, and that particularly drew me to the game from the get-go, because I grew up, you know, in my childhood I grew up as being a Final Fantasy fan. I played a lot of their games, like especially some of the older generation ones, like on NES, you know, Game Boy, you know, and stuff like that. And then PlayStation 1. I played a lot of those games and watched friends play them. And so it's very something close to my heart, the Final Fantasy series, and that's why I wanted to give this game a try. But I was hesitant at first, I'm not gonna lie, in that I know how MMO atmospheres work and function. I know how the internet works. And typically, you know, with such games as MMOs, there's tends to be unsavory behaviors and attitudes that come up. And often this leads to new players having a really bad time and really bad experience because of it. And so I didn't know at first if this would be a game I would keep on for so long, because of that aspect of online gaming and how it typically goes. But I tried it. I played a few hours in a couple of weeks. I found a very nice free company of people. They took me under their wing. They gave me everything I needed to know to start getting through the game, and teaching me stuff that I may have not known before about the game. So I'm particularly grateful for them, and I will always have those memories of them and the things that they did. Sorry for the camera, by the way, guys. I play over here and stream. Really annoying sticky joystick situation, so sorry about that. But anyway, steering back on topic, like I said, you know, I'm grateful to the free company that I had here starting out, and it was really great to get to know them. I'll never forget them. They made my Final Fantasy experience more impactful and more meaningful. Now moving on, as I said, we're going to go into aspects and reasons as to why I'm specifically wanting to leave Final Fantasy XIV behind for, even though I've been here for, as long as I have, again. And that's a lot of core issues. And I'll list them. So first is development direction. This is probably one of the important things to talk about. And that is that ever since a Realm Reborn, or rather I should say Heavensward, they've kind of steered themselves in a direction of where I guess they feel like it's comfortable, reasonably comfortable, but in a same sense, that comfort comes at a cost to, like, getting a lot of new things, and basically player enjoyment and player satisfaction. And I won't lie and say Heavensward was a good expansion. It was. We've got 3 playable new jobs. We got a new race, the Aura, in both female and male variants. And it was just an overall great story arc to go through. We had lots of different trials as Realm Reborn introduced. Some new raids. New zones, obviously, new music, glamour, weapons, all that kind of stuff, mounts. And then we got a couple new types of content to try. The Palace of the Dead, which is kind of like a tower climb sort of thing that you see in quite a few online RPGs or MMOs. You'll see that they have these like towers or something where you'll challenge floors and go floor by floor and floor as far as you can possibly take it until you're either dead like a wipe, or you reach the end. So this is what Palace of the Dead was, and they've introduced some interesting, fun little mechanics to it. You have the pomanders and everything that you can use to grant special effects, or maybe take out traps and just maul enemies and such. So it was an interesting type of content, and it's good for leveling in or learning your job from scratch if that's what you prefer. Like if you're someone who's hardcore, you have to learn everything, and this house will help people learn jobs and learn how they do, learn how they're supposed to be played and everything like that. So it was good for that. And the next type of content we got, which was maybe not as well received as they would have liked, but was the Diadem, in which you would go in there to collect weapons and stuff to upgrade weapons with. And you basically fight a bunch of mobs in this unique zone where you'd fly from, like, these flying little continent things. You jump, fly from place to place, just killing some mobs and getting a few drops here and there. It was a really big instance too. You had about like 24 people in each instance, so they're definitely lively in the chats and everything. So it was definitely not perfect content by any stretch, but it was still pretty okay content, and that's all that mattered, was that we got a pretty good experience out of that. Now, Stormblood is where my gripe finally started to come in, and I started to think a little bit more about the development going on, and that's that basically Stormblood was really just exactly the same as Heavensward. It took all the same core aspects and all the same content and just added different skin to it, basically. And I was wondering, I wasn't the only one, of course. There were other individuals besides me who was just wondering, like, what kind of happened there, like the story quality kind of reduced a little bit. The content quality didn't really change. It just remained the same. Dungeons, raids, trials. They didn't really bring anything that new to the table, other than, of course, one little side content, which was the map dungeons that they introduced to the regular treasure map thing. And they expanded further upon that to include like a little Wheel of Fortune type of thing. Which, I mean, that can be exciting and fun. I won't lie. I won't disagree with that. But, again, that's like one of the only new things that we got in Stormblood besides, 2 new jobs. They had to cut back on a job because of time management and resources that they had available for the expansion. But Stormblood in and of itself had a rocky start and a rocky finish to end, so it really wasn't as favorable as an expansion as they would have planned it out to be. I was so happy, though. Don't get me completely wrong. I did get Samurai, which was a job I was really, really wanting to start with from the beginning of the game, Realm Reborn, when I first started. But it just wasn't there. And I guess that's my fault for having that expectation that, that it would be just kind of like Final Fantasy XI, where you would have all the core jobs, all the fan favorite jobs just right at the start. But I'm guessing, that was really just naivete on my part, so. But they did add it, so I was very happy about that. Though unhappy that the fact that they changed Ninja so drastically that it really didn't feel as great to play coming into Stormblood, so I just gave it up and picked up the Samurai Katana instead. Kind of like pulling a Xenos, I guess you could say, how he started with a gunblade, then he beat up a few guys and was like, oh, you know what, this blade's actually pretty sharp and pretty light to swing around, I'll take this. So, I have a similar situation for me, except, I've been having a sword kick from the beginning as a DPS, so I was happy that Samurai was in Stormblood. But anyway, moving on. So after that, like I said, I just noticed the development had changed, and not really in a good way. And so I was really disappointed when that happened in Stormblood. But then Shadowbringers came, and that kind of sort of made up for it. I was excited to get into Shadowbringers. I felt as though maybe this time will be different around, and in some aspects it was, but in others not so. In the good aspects, they brought in more new types of content, so that's really good. I'm really happy they did that instead of rehashing everything again. So I was happy for that, at least. But battle-wise, again, same stuff. New raids, new trials. And PvP was just kind of forgotten about here, really, which is a shame. That was another thing I forgot to mention, Stormblood, though. They did add a new PvP thing, and in Heavensward as well. So, those were new types of things to play and try out, but fundamentally the same tireless grind that is an MMO. And that's really where I've kind of drawn the line here, is that, what am I really paying to play for? And is that, am I playing with because I have friends to play with and talk and chat with? Am I paying to do content with them, or just do content on my own time? Or am I, paying just for the sake of paying and supporting a game franchise that I really, really enjoy and love? And so that pointed me to, it's not friends and socialize, it's not content, but it's because I actually adore and love Final Fantasy. Now again, I'm not talking about Final Fantasy XIV in particular here. I'm talking about the Final Fantasy series as a whole. Across the whole board. Not specifically 14, just to clarify. And that's what I was basically subscribing and supporting 14 for. But here's where I'm going to have to really be critical. And some of you may hate me for it. Like I said, that's fine. We all have different opinions. We don't have to be agreeing 100% of the time on what we like or dislike. But I am going to not mince words here and point out the major flaws that 14 has here. And for some, they just can't accept that truth or reality of the fact. And I guess all I can say is, that's not really my concern. If you're going to be in denial of the facts presented before us, then you're just not ever going to be satisfied or reasoned with. So, hate away if you wish. It's your right to do. And I'm just going to give my thoughts and opinions and make sure that people aren't falling into this pit hole or trap that I kind of threw myself into. So what I mean by that is that there's things that 14 refuses to do for whatever reason. And Naoki Yoshida, the producer and director of Final Fantasy XIV, has maybe subtly tried to warn us of this and hint at the possibilities. He once said to an interview, and I'm sure this caused a little bit of PR hell, and he was probably maybe rebuked for it. I can't really say. But the fact that he's getting a money train out of 14 made me think it was more of a wrist slap than anything. But what he said when people were concerned, like I said with Stormblood earlier, and that's that what happened, you know. Why did the quality drop significantly? Was it because they lost money, lost subscribers, players? Was it because of, you know, not the staff being understaffed? And people started asking these questions. So finally, when someone in an interview asked him, hey, you know, what kind of happened with Stormblood here? The players want to know what's going on. And so he gave this explanation saying that basically it's not about having more people, it's not about having more money or necessarily more resources to use at their hands. So okay, now we're getting that thought process going. Okay, so no money concerns, no resource concerns, and no staff problem concerns. So then that only leaves us with a few more things. Corporate issues from above deliberately withholding, you know, things that would make this game truly a great masterpiece to last for all of time, and that people will talk about to their children and their grandchildren. And just the engine, the graphical engine that the game is running on, and the leftover coding from the original 1.0, which in another sort of interview he addressed this as well. He said they've chopped out a significant amount of 1.0 code to kind of stabilize things ever so slightly, but it doesn't seem like it was enough at all to improve the game as a whole. So again, he said not money, not resources, and not team members. So this is where we really have to start hoarding and picking the bad guys that are really there, or I should say bad actors, which are really holding everything back that this game could achieve, but for some reason it does not. I'm going to address these bad actors for you so that you can better understand exactly why we can't have expansion of our glamour chest, expansion of our inventories, why Viera, Hrothgar are so limited in customization, and why they had to pull, you know, extra hard to make that happen, when they really shouldn't have, by the way. If they have as much money and resources as they claimed, as Yoshida claimed, then why is it then that they're pulling so extra hard just to make us fans satisfied with something, when it's the company's duty itself to provide this for their consumers? That's what we are as subscribers. We're not just random people on the internet enjoying a video game with each other, or not enjoying in some cases. We're consumers. We're paying customers. So therefore, we have some sort of entitlement to know what our money is really going towards. And a lot of people have memed that, oh, you know, it's our money gets funneled to other games that they want to make and stuff, other departments. And I say, well, you know what? There could be a kernel of truth in that little tidbit, but just a kernel, a little kernel. But honestly, I think part of it is someone above, could be the CEO himself, which we have seen come out and say, you know, Final Fantasy XIV is going to continue. You know, you guys were scared and worried because this was our 10-year, and that's usually when the contracts were expired for development, but he says it's continued and renewed for however long. They didn't specify a time frame for however long the contract's renewed. I'm assuming it's good for another 5-10 years, if that, depending on how well the game continues to go or not go. But either way, someone that's above Yoshida, for whatever reason, is not allowing him to have the things that we could have to make the game experience grow and flourish even further than what it is. And look, guys, I'm not going to sit here and argue that I play only certain types of content or whatnot, and that's why I'm frustrated that I don't get to have that certain type of content, because that's not it at all. What's particularly frustrating to me here is not the fact that content might be getting, some might be getting the axe, some might be being removed altogether. That's not the bigger issue at hand. The bigger issue at hand is that in its place we're getting bare minimal for the things that we could have. Things that a lot of other free, keyword free, MMOs have. And they're not even getting paid to even do all that. They're in fact making you pay for all that by offering it as additional DLC while you get to run around in this vast open space that they've created for you, essentially a playground, if you will, to just leisurely blow your time and blow some money away into. But they do inventory and other things a lot better than 14 does when you compare the two. I know I'm not talking about World of Warcraft. I know there's a lot of people that come over from World of Warcraft saying, oh, you know, why don't we have this in our game? Or why does our game have this but this game doesn't? They like to go back and forth a lot because they're competitors. So naturally they're going to do that. But I'm not just talking about those two comparisons between each other. I'm talking about all different kinds of MMORPGs that are free-to-play models, mind you, that do... I'm sorry, guys, the dog's being loud unnecessarily, so forgive that outburst by him. I might have to go get him if he keeps it up so that we can finish this discussion. But anyway, I'm not just specifically talking about the WoW versus 14 debacles that people like to throw back and forth. I'm talking about all different games that are MMORPGs that are doing things much better and more efficiently without subscriptions or being paid to than Final Fantasy XIV is. That's making you pay them monthly or sometimes tri-monthly, depending on what your subscription model you prefer to use. But they're making you pay for extra inventory space. As an example. They make you pay if you want to change something so basic and so simple in this game as eye color. Or, you know, if you just want to change like your face or something to that effect. And that's pretty messed up that other games can give you that customization easily with one simple token that you can grind for in-game. Whereas 14, no, you have to pay for that. You have to pay for the extra inventory. You have to pay for the... Pay if you want to have different, like, eye color. Or different, you know, shapes of your body. That's, again, this has something to do with greedy corporation tactics. The corporation is just one villain. Like I said, there are others. Let's move on to our next villains. And that's the community representation that we get from the forums, the lodestone, etc. And influencers, basically people who are paid streamers. They make ad revenues just to play 14 because it's trending, you know, it's something that's trending, and a lot of people talk about in circus and recycle it through the web and everything. These people are our next villains that we need to discuss. So, let's talk about the representatives first before we talk about influencers. Representatives. They're there to represent. They're there to represent you, the fan base, the player base that is paying to play Final Fantasy XIV. So they're supposed to be kind of like in a perfect democracy, if such a thing even exists. They're supposed to be the people that represent, you know, our thoughts, our feelings on how we want the game to go in direction-wise. And what we want to see more of, content we want them to get rid of, what things we want them to do. But, you know, for some reason, the community reps rarely, if ever, do that. We, the players ourselves, have to band together in mass, keyword again, in mass, to actually get them past their stubborn, whatever ways that they seem to think needs to be said and passed on. You know, hand to mouth sort of thing. We, the community, have to do the whole pulling and pushing the player base in order to basically, essentially, bully them into getting what we want them to do in the first place, instead of what we don't want. And you see this all the time, of course. Whenever they're asking for questions to be taken from players. You should notice and kind of criticize this yourself and think critically. Why are there no critical questions in these? Why are there no tough questions in these? Well, the answer is because they're being omitted, sliced, cut, thrown out. Because the community representatives who get this, they were supposed to represent us and pass it on, they don't like it. And you're supposed to like this game. You're supposed to put a cherry on top and enjoy everything about it, according to their ideology. Anything bad you say, well, oh, you're just blowing it out of proportion. You don't know what you're talking about. You're not a designer. You're not a developer. You can't talk. You can't decide anything. Well, they're wrong. We can. And we have proved them wrong many times. We've banded together, like I've said. It has to be us that does the pushing and pulling. We have to group up constantly all the time to push and push real hard at supposedly people who are supposed to represent us in the first place. So these villains are perhaps the worst ones, I would say. But even worse are to come as the last villains that we'll discuss. But before we get to them, we're now moving towards our final villain, or I said next villain, influencers. These people who go out and stream and they, get all the hype going, they get people excited, they pump them up, tell them, oh, this game is flawless. Flawless. Nothing wrong with it. It's a perfect game. Recommended 100 out of 100. 10 out of 10. Would play for hours and play again. But yet they don't. They're completely hypocritical and talking out of their ass. I might get demonetized for saying that word here, but oh well. I have to say it for what it is. And call out these influencers, these YouTubers, these Twitchers, who seem to follow this hive mentality and rile people up, all for the sake of discrediting anything that disagrees with their views. And they send mobs of their deranged fanatics that worship their every words and praise Final Fantasy XIV, all the rooftop and above, and shout at people who disagree with them, and dare to even say one bad thing about their precious, precious game that they just have to lift on the highest of pedestals, no matter how bad it gets or how saying people start to get, or people that just straight up quit and leave. And this has happened a few times already. Which brings me now to our last villain in this sordid tale. And that's parts of the community itself within 14. There is some of the most toxic and freaking ridiculous people in this community, let me tell you. Some of these characters, I don't know where they come out of. But they weren't sure as hell weren't here before. No, Stormblood. They weren't here in the Realm Reborn or the 1.0 days. So where did they come from exactly? Well, again, part of that, like I said, corporate greed. You know, all their paid advertisers and promotions that they just shove everywhere that they possibly can think to shove it, until it's basically staring you in the face like dead center. And then just, again, these influencers, YouTubers, Twitch streamers, who, like I said, will bash on anyone who disagrees with their favorite game, according to them. Their prized golden egg, their trophy. They're part of the problem that leads into the final issue in the community, which was not even an issue in the older days, especially when I started. You'd have a few bouts here and there between free companies, like Link Shells or something like that, or Facebook, which was the thing that people commonly used before Twitter started becoming more popular to flock to. Sorry about that. But there would be just minimal bouts, few trolls, easily ignored, people blocked them and went on their way. They didn't make this big huge fuss and cause wars over Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, whatever. They didn't have people going out there sending death threats to people who disagreed with their perfect game. None of that happened. And it's more important that we become more aware of this, hence why I have to say it here now. That these problems, if they continue to persist, it's going to cause a lot of damage to this game in the long run. All the bad faith actors, the corporatist greed, and selfishness, I should say, corporate greed and selfishness, bad actors, and them causing toxicity and elitism to run rampant in the minds of people that follow them. It's gonna really, really have lasting consequences if it goes on like this. I'm not lying to you. I promise you guys that. You'll see for yourself, trust me. And I've seen these problems arise that are preventing the game from truly being, like I said, the greatest game that we could possibly have ever had, and possibly even the best Final Fantasy game that they've produced. But yet all these problems that I've managed to bring to this discussion here are really what's going to end it. And it's really ended it for me, honestly. That's why when, I saw the title for, this next expansion, which is really my last, I'm not going to be sticking around after 6.0. I want to finish it because, it is the end of, Final Fantasy XIV's old age. Of its, Bronze or Gold Age, whatever you want to call it. And they're moving towards, I guess, newer pastures, new horizons, making adjustments and trying, as the producer says, to future-proof Final Fantasy XIV. But again, I say to them, you devs, if you're listening, and I know you are, I know you developers are listening, because you're always going the extra mile for the players' sakes. So I know you're out there listening, and that maybe one of you, if not a few of you, will see my video eventually. And that's what I want to say, is how can you future-proof a game with such destructive influence behind it? And such destructive decisions made from above that are killing your guys' game. Slowly, but surely killing it. I know they're not blind, and I know they're not ignorant, the developers. But, like I said, part of the problem is the representation we have. They don't pass along this critical kind of feedback that I'm giving to the developers through this video right now. It's just not getting sent to them. They're not getting the message. So how can we ever change things for the better, and to have things that, like I said, all these other MMO games do so much better, and they really shouldn't be, for Final Fantasy XIV that's so vastly praised and put on the highest of pedestals again. Why is it then that they're lacking what other games, which are free, are providing to the table and do so much better? And they don't even charge for most of it. Now that's gonna be, like I said, the big bombshells for you guys. And why I'm going to say farewell to supporting Final Fantasy XIV. And let me tell you, I don't do this easily. I really do not. It kind of breaks my heart in a way that I even have to make this video and put it out there. Because I do care about this game a lot. I've met a lot of great people from this game. Even someone who I deeply care about and admire, I've met through this game. But I just can't do it anymore, you guys. I can't continue to lie here like so many of these bad faith actors are right now, even as we speak. I just can't bring myself to do that. And that's why you guys deserve to know and hear the truth. And like I said, some of you might not be able to accept it at first. You might be in denial of it for as long as you possibly can, until it knocks down your door and then you're faced to see the reality. And it's gonna suck real hard. Trust me, this really sucks for me. And I don't know what else to really say. I can't really sit here and defend anything anymore about Final Fantasy XIV. Because I don't even want to continue playing and supporting it. It's a fitting name, like I said, for the last expansion that I'll probably do and support. Endwalker. As for me, it does feel like it's an end. Regrettably so. And I'm sorry if that disappoints some of you who enjoyed some of my content that I did for 14. Or guides that I made that you found useful and helpful to you. But it needs to be said. All of it. And people need to start waking up. They need to wake up, open their eyes and ears for once. Stop being so numb-minded and following the leader like sheep. Just because one guy says that the game's terrific doesn't mean that everyone thinks that it is. Just because they have this maybe supposed imaginary large following, which, by the way, guys, there's really not. I'll tell you the truth about all these supposedly high numbered people with just crazy out of control chat numbers. Some of them are not real. They're bots. You don't believe me? Google it. Search it up. There's literally ways they can buy subscribers. Buy bots who will act just like normal people. And just repeat like Pog or emotes and everything like normal people would do. Whereas real people, and you'll notice the real people there, they will come out and tell you, no, I don't agree. Or they'll tell you that, yeah, this game isn't perfect. That's how you know the real people from the bots, supposedly real followers, which is really only just a few minority. And like I said, I do expect to get hated on for this, for shouting this truth out. And people will say probably nasty, uncalled for things on this video. They'll dislike it. They'll share it to make others dislike it and to bring them and tell them, hey, come on, let's all attack and gang up on this small little group guy here. Let's go through his Twitter feed, his comment feeds. Let's try and look him up and find him somewhere. Let's see if he's got any skeletons in his closet that we can bash him on. I'm sure I'll get a few of those people like that. But, you know, I don't really care. And in fact, you know what? Good for them. Good for them for helping my video just become more recognized. That will help this message hopefully be heard more. The more the haters keep passing it from mouth to mouth, ears to ears, eyes to eyes. That will help, so I guess thank you, haters. If you're going to be one of those kind of people, thank you very much for helping me get this message out there. Hopefully maybe one of the devs will see it and look at it. Maybe they'll start to ponder and improve on the gameplay experience and address the issues which are, like I said, slowly killing this game and will bring it to its knees. But, like I said, you're free to disagree. If you have a better argument to counter anything I've said, by all means, try and argue it and tell me that I'm wrong. I challenge you to. Go ahead. But in the end, like I said, it's going to get out there, the truth. And people are going to wake up. But there's just too many bad actors. Too many villains actively destroying Final Fantasy XIV for players like me. You've supported it and stood by it all the way through. But now we're the ones paying the price for it. Because I guess these bad villains, their voice is louder than the good ones. And they just drown out all the critical and much needed feedback needed for this game to grow. Truly grow. But I think that'll be it for here, guys. I thank you for hearing this old veteran player's gripes and remorses. I certainly didn't expect it to be and end up this way. Honestly. But I'm not going to sit there and lie to your faces like so many others do. I'm really not. So I hope that you guys do hear my words and take them to heart. Because we can still learn from our mistakes, from the past mistakes that we've made. We can. And if we do, then maybe I'll decide to come back again and play Final Fantasy XIV. But until then, this is kind of where I have to say farewell. And maybe see you again someday in 14. But I'm going to go on. I'm moving on from it. I'm going to look for other games, other communities that might be starting off fresh. In fact, there's a really great MMO game that I'm really looking forward to, that I've heard many great things about. And from seeing it with my own eyes, yeah, you know what? It looks terrific. It does. It might even surpass Final Fantasy XIV or come close to it in terms of what it allows you to do. And just the open world effect of it and quality of life that these developers are putting their heart and soul into even as we speak. Now you're wondering, what is this magical game you're talking about? Of course, the haters will just be like, "Oh, you know what? You're just a pitiful weeb. You're just a moron. You're nothing. You just shit talk just for the views and all that." That's what the haters will say. You know, whatever. Forget them. But this game I'm talking about is called Blue Protocol. I'm sure some of you have heard of it. And this kind of looks like a new Bastion for me. It looks great, amazing. The gameplay seems pretty fluid. There's plenty to do PvE-wise. They kind of a little iffy on the PvP side, but that's okay because many don't know this, but in Japan, you know, they're not really huge on like the PvP sort of atmosphere. Don't get me wrong, they do like esports. Some of them do like to watch esports stuff. They like competition. They do. They like to feel challenged. But for the majority, video game wise, they just like to do it leisurely and have lots of fun. And that's exactly what Blue Protocol is essentially going to do. And so I'm very much looking forward to this game, and we'll see how it pans out. If it doesn't pan out well, that's fine too. I'll offer my criticisms for that as well. But that's really all I have to say. I'm going to move back to my roots, single player games, for a while. Maybe I'll stream them for the channel when I can. It's still kind of really difficult right now, situation-wise, to get adequate quality. As you may have already seen throughout this video, how I've had to apologize quite a few times. But once things do change, I'll be sure to let you guys know. And when I say you guys, I mean those who watch my videos for the entertainment, or they just, whatever reason they might have to watch my videos, and those who are subscribers to me and follow me. Anyway, guys, boy, has it been a long discussion. Emotion-filled discussion. I'm going to be adding annotations to this video. If you notice there's like closed captions, then that's the reason why. And the reason why I want to do this specifically for this video is because I want this message to be heard by a developer from the team of Final Fantasy. And a lot of times they have a hard time with English and other languages like French, Spanish, Portuguese, Russian, German, all that. English they can understand bits and pieces of, though. Naoki Yoshida and Soken himself speak okay-ish English. You know, it's kind of a thing they have to do as a business practice to speak English so that they can communicate to the other development teams across seas, you know, to North America, because North America is their top consumer for video game consumption. And so they just kind of need to have that trade relationship, and so, but they don't understand words by simply hearing them alone. So the captions and annotations I add to this video is more to help them so that they can get like a translator which they do have one. You know, Koji, Christopher Fox. You know, he's usually the one that they go to for translations of things. Or even, you know, they just have a few entrepreneurs or people in the office, you know, who are translators and such. So they'll ask them, they'll kind of poke them on the show and say, hey, you know, I've been watching so and so, and he said a bunch of words I'm not so sure about. Can you translate this roughly for me into some way I can understand it a little better? And they'll be like, oh yeah, no problem, you know. So that will be why you might see annotations or, you know, the captions in this video. So it might seem weird at first, but that's why I'm doing it. Anyway, you guys, this is Amadeus and it's been a fun journey. Thank you guys who've watched my videos, who've supported my channel, or channels I should say. And I wish you all of the best. I hope that you guys, if you're still enjoying Final Fantasy, then I hope you continue to. Especially for newer players. I'm not saying newer players shouldn't play the game. That's not what this message is about at all. This is more a message directed to the development team and to players, existing players like me who've been playing for a long time. This is more a message directed at them than new players. New players, I 100% think that they should play all the way to the end, which now it's confirmed to be Endwalker. I know, and I know in interviews Yoshida have said, no, it's not really the end of Final Fantasy XIV, but it is like a new chapter. Which is just, you know, the polite way of saying, yeah, it's the end as far as, you know, our story direction goes, but we're going to be, you know, working on something new for you guys going forward. Content-wise, as far as I've seen for Endwalker, it's just really all the same. And that feels really bad. I don't know if I can feel optimistic again about whatever new things they might think of bringing, because so far since Heavensward Pass, like I said, it's all been just copy and pasted. It's all just been new things but with different colors of paint or different skins, and that's really not future-proofing a game at all. That's doing the opposite of future-proofing. That's turning people away and turning them off. So that needs to be brought to their attention, and I hope it does. Anyway, you guys, that'll be it. Thank you for watching, and who knows when I'll be able to see you again or talk to you again. It might be a while still. But thank you very much for your love and support.